The old photograph trembled in Marcus Riley's weathered hands, a faded image of two soldiers, one human, one canine, standing against a dusty Afghanistan sunrise. Jax's fur had been cleaner then, his eyes sharper. The German Shepherd had saved 23 lives that deployment, including Marcus's own. Now, as rain lashed against the cabin windows, Jax's graying muzzle rested on Marcus's knee, those same loyal eyes clouded with age, but still watching his human's every move. Thunder rumbled in the distance, reminiscent of the artillery fire that had once been their constant companion. Marcus instinctively stroked the scar running along his forearm, a permanent reminder of the IED that nearly took them both 3 years ago. Staff Sergeant Daniels hadn't been so lucky that day. The memory of carrying his friend's dog tags back to base still haunted Marcus's nightmares. "Just us now, old friend," Marcus whispered, the Medal of Valor hanging forgotten on the wall alongside the team photo of Special Canine Unit Delta. Now half its members were either dead or scattered across VA hospitals throughout the country. The cabin itself was a testament to Marcus's need for isolation. Nestled in the Colorado mountains, the nearest neighbor was 4 miles away, exactly how he wanted it after the chaos and noise of war. Captain Rivera still called monthly, checking in, reminding Marcus that the team hadn't forgotten him. Marcus rarely answered. The phone's sudden ring shattered their quiet sanctuary. Marcus hadn't heard that specific ringtone in 3 years, not since he'd turned in his badge and walked away from it all. Only 3 people had this number, and 2 of them respected his silence. When he answered, the voice on the other end changed everything. "Riley? It's Catherine. They've taken my daughter?" The calm in her voice betrayed her military training, but Marcus caught the undercurrent of fear. Catherine Chen had been his commanding officer, the woman who'd recommended him for the Medal of Honor he'd refused to accept. The woman who'd pulled strings to get him this cabin when the PTSD became too much. The fluorescent lights of Denver's Veteran Affairs Center cast harsh shadows across Marcus Riley's face as he stared at the case file spread before him. Jax, the 9-year-old German Shepherd who had once swept Taliban hideouts for explosives, now wore a service dog vest instead of tactical gear. His ears remained alert, tracking Catherine Chen's movements as she paced the small conference room. Dr. Amari, the VA psychiatrist who'd been working with both Marcus and Jax for their shared trauma, stood silently in the corner. She'd made the room available off-record, understanding the gravity of the situation when Marcus called. Her own history with Army intelligence made her valuable and trustworthy. "They want the decryption keys," Catherine said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. As former military intelligence and Marcus's former commanding officer, she had enemies, powerful ones. "They took Sophie from her college dorm 3 days ago." Marcus studied the grainy surveillance photo, noting the tactical precision with which the abduction had been executed. The timing between camera angles, the professional stance of the men involved, this wasn't random. He recognized the work of trained operatives. "The kid who tried to help her?" Marcus asked, pointing to another figure in the photo. "Hospital, concussion, broken ribs, pre-med student named Eli Thornton. He's been calling Sophie's phone hourly since it happened." Marcus studied the timeline Catherine had assembled. "Why come to me? You have resources, connections." "Because they're watching everything official," Catherine replied, sliding another photo across the table. "And because Jax trained with Sophie for 2 summers. He knows her scent better than any other tracking dog could learn it in time." Dr. Amari moved closer. "Scent memory in trained military dogs can last years, especially when there's an emotional connection." She'd specialized in canine handler PTSD pairs after 3 tours as a field medic. Jax remembers Sophie. As if understanding, Jax's ears perked up at the mention of the girl's name. The unspoken truth hung between them. At 9 years old, With arthritis in his hips and partial hearing loss from years of combat explosions, Jax was past his prime. But the kidnappers had given Catherine just 72 hours to deliver the intelligence keys that would compromise field operatives across Southeast Asia. Lieutenant Colonel Harris, Catherine's former subordinate now in charge of regional operations, had already called twice, messages Catherine had ignored. She knew the official channels were compromised. "We're retired," Marcus said softly, feeling Jax press reassuringly against his leg. The dog's warmth was his constant anchor to reality when the memories threatened to pull him under. Catherine's eyes hardened. "Tell me you haven't kept up his training. Tell me those midnight runs in the mountains aren't tracking exercises." Marcus couldn't. Even in retirement, the training continued. It gave them both purpose after the nightmares and panic attacks. The scent kits hidden in his cabin, the carefully designed obstacles on his property that mirrored urban search environments. Retirement was a word on paper, not a state of mind. Dr. Amari placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "This could be therapeutic for both of you," she said quietly. "Purpose is what you've been missing." Marcus glanced at the medical file she'd left open on her desk. His file. The notes about subjects' continued isolation and reluctance to engage with civilian purpose were highlighted. She'd been trying to guide him back to some version of his former life for months. "The FBI is compromised," Catherine continued. "Sophie was taken by professionals who knew exactly when and where to strike. I need someone I can trust." Marcus felt the familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Responsibility, duty, purpose. His hand instinctively found the spot behind Jax's ear, the one that made the shepherd's eyes close momentarily in contentment. There was a silent communication between them that transcended words or commands. "One last mission," Marcus finally said. "But we do this my way." 6 hours later, Marcus and Jax moved silently through the industrial district on Denver's outskirts. The abandoned textile factory loomed against the night sky, its broken windows like jagged teeth in a concrete skull. Intelligence from Catherine's private sources had narrowed Sophie's location to this 3-block radius. In the van parked 3 streets away, Dr. Amari monitored Jax's vitals through the specialized vest she'd provided, an experimental VA prototype designed to track the health statistics of aging service dogs in the field. Next to her, technical specialist Rivera worked his magic on a tablet, having flown in from Fort Benning when Catherine called. His history with the team made him trustworthy, and his hacking skills made him essential. "Security system went active 10 minutes ago," Rivera reported through the encrypted comms. "Motion sensors on all main entrances." "Professional setup?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Military grade. Someone's got serious backing." Marcus processed this as he surveyed the complex. Whoever had Sophie wasn't working alone. This operation had resources, connections, the kind that came from within the system. Jax moved with surprising agility for his age, nose working the cold night air. Marcus had given him Sophie's scarf, kept in an airtight bag since her last visit, and the German shepherd remembered. Some sense, Marcus knew, Jax would never forget. They had circled the perimeter twice when Jax suddenly stiffened, his ears forward, body rigid with alertness. Not his explosive detection pose, but something equally intense. Marcus recognized it immediately, human scent, familiar, under duress. "He's got something," Dr. Amari confirmed through the earpiece. His cortisol levels just spiked. "Show me," Marcus whispered, the command barely audible. Jax's training kicked in, 9 years of battlefield experience overriding the arthritis that normally slowed his movements. In this moment, he was once again the war dog that had saved an entire platoon from an ambush in Kandahar. Jax led him to a service entrance, pausing to indicate fresh scuff marks on the concrete. Someone had entered recently, dragging something heavy. Professional instincts flooded back to Marcus. Entry points, Cover positions, threat assessment. The weight of the concealed sidearm beneath his jacket was both familiar and unwelcome. 2 heat signatures near that entrance, Rivera confirmed through the comms. Stationary. Likely guards. Marcus checked the tactical watch Catherine had provided. Military prototype with enhanced night vision display. The blueprint of the factory glowed faintly on the screen, Rivera's work providing him with real-time intelligence. We find her. We get out, Marcus reminded himself. No heroics. Your heart rate is elevated, Dr. Amari noted through the earpiece. Remember your breathing exercises. Marcus acknowledged with a tap on his comm unit, then took 3 deep breaths, the calming technique Dr. Amari had drilled into him during their sessions. Combat mode was too easy to slip back into, and he needed clarity, not adrenaline. Inside, the factory was a labyrinth of rusted machinery and fallen ceiling tiles. Jax moved confidently, his gray muzzle close to the ground, following a trail invisible to human senses. They passed through the main production floor, once filled with workers and machinery, now home to nothing but dust and shadows. A sudden movement in the darkness sent Marcus into a crouch, hand on his weapon. A thin figure emerged from behind a column, young, civilian clothes, hands raised defensively. Don't shoot, the young man whispered. I'm Eli, Sophie's friend. Marcus recognized him from Catherine's photos, the pre-med student who'd tried to prevent the abduction. His face was still bruised, one eye swollen. How did you find this place? Marcus demanded, suspicious. Followed them. I put a tracker in Sophie's backpack last month after she told me about the threats her mother had received. His voice cracked. I was too scared to go in alone. Jax paused at a stairwell leading down, his muscles tensing. Marcus knew that posture. There were people below. He could hear them now, too, voices echoing faintly through the concrete. Good boy, Marcus whispered, offering Jax a reassuring touch. Find Sophie. The basement level was divided into small offices, most with their doors hanging off broken hinges. Light spilled from beneath one door at the corridor's end, the only sign of occupation in the abandoned complex. Marcus approached slowly, keeping to the shadows, Jax matching his stealth step for step. 3 armed individuals in the room with Sophie, Rivera reported through the comms, his voice tight. Satellite thermal imaging just came online. Eli had insisted on coming along despite Marcus's objections. His medical training might prove useful if Sophie was injured, and the determined look in his eyes told Marcus the young man would have followed anyway. Sometimes civilians with personal stakes made the most unpredictable allies. Through a crack in the door, Marcus could see 3 armed men and a young woman zip-tied to a chair. Sophie's dark hair was matted against her forehead, but her eyes burned with the same defiance her mother had shown in combat zones across 3 continents. One of the men, tall, with a distinctive scar running along his jawline, looked disturbingly familiar. Kovac, Marcus whispered in recognition. Sergeant Emil Kovac had been dishonorably discharged after selling operational intelligence in Marcus's second deployment. Catherine had testified at his court-martial. Your mother has 6 hours left, Kovac was saying, his accent Eastern European. Then we start sending pieces of you back as motivation. Blackwater protocol is already compromised, Sophie replied, her voice steady despite her situation. She'll never give you those keys. Kovac slapped her hard across the face. Your mother ruined my life. Now I'll take everything from her too. Marcus assessed the situation with cold precision. 3 hostiles, all armed, 1 hostage, limited exits. Jax sensed his tension, pressing closer against his leg. We have a team 12 minutes out, Dr. Amari whispered through the comms. Catherine's people. The decision should have been simple. Call in Catherine's contacts, wait for extraction specialists. That was the smart play. But the man was now checking his watch, pulling out a knife, moving towards Sophie. "No more time," Marcus whispered to Jax, reaching into his pack to retrieve 2 items: a specialized canine tactical vest he'd kept from their service days and a small cylindrical device. Jax stood perfectly still as Marcus secured the lightweight ballistic vest around his torso. Their eyes met in silent communication. They'd done this hundreds of times in dusty compounds half a world away. Dr. Amari's voice came through the comms. "Marcus, wait for backup." "Jax's heart rate is—" Marcus silenced the comlink. Doctors could never understand the bond between a handler and his dog. Jax wasn't just following commands, he was completing the mission alongside his partner. "Remember your training," Marcus said softly. "Find the girl." Eli watched with wide eyes as the transformation took place, both man and dog shifting from civilian to warrior in seconds. "I'll create a distraction at the other entrance," the student whispered, understanding instinctively what was needed. Marcus nodded, grateful for the unexpected ally. "On my signal, 3 minutes." As Eli slipped away, Marcus activated the device, a military-grade sonic disruptor that emitted a frequency painful to human ears but outside Jax's range of hearing. He rolled it down the hallway toward the door. The reaction was immediate. Inside the room, the 3 men clutched their ears in pain. Marcus used the distraction to breach the door, Jax moving in perfect tandem beside him. What followed was a blur of precision violence. Jax launched at the nearest gunman, taking him down with decades of tactical training. Marcus engaged the second man, while Kovac recovered enough to reach for his weapon. Sophie, seeing her opportunity, threw her weight sideways in the chair, crashing into the armed man's legs. From the opposite door, Eli appeared, having circled around through the maintenance tunnels Marcus had spotted on the blueprints. The young man hurled a fire extinguisher through the window, the pressurized contents filling the room with obscuring white powder. "Jax, protect!" Marcus shouted as he struggled with his opponent. The shepherd immediately broke from his target and positioned himself between Sophie and the armed kidnapper, teeth bared. The service dog transformed instantly back into the war dog that had earned commendations in 3 combat tours. Kovac hesitated just long enough for Marcus to end his confrontation and advance. Seconds later, the room was secure, 3 hostiles incapacitated. "You're Catherine Chen's man!" Kovac spat blood from his split lip. "I should have known she'd send her pet killer." Marcus ignored him, quickly zip-tying the man's hands with practiced efficiency. The familiar rhythm of post-combat procedures felt like slipping into an old, well-worn uniform, comfortable in its familiarity, disconcerting in how easily it all came back. "Sophie Chen?" Marcus asked, quickly cutting the zip ties binding her to the chair. "Yes," she replied, rubbing her wrists. "My mother sent you?" "She did," Marcus confirmed, checking her for injuries. "This is Jax. He tracked you." Sophie's eyes widened with recognition as she looked at the German shepherd. "I remember you," she whispered, kneeling despite her situation to greet the dog at eye level. "Summer training, 3 years ago. You found me in the woods every time." Jax pressed his nose against her hand, tail wagging slightly, despite the tension still evident in his posture. The dog's training was impeccable, still alert, still on mission, but acknowledging the successful recovery of his target. Eli rushed to Sophie's side, his medical training taking over as he examined the cut on her forehead. "We need to clean this," he said, pulling a small first aid kit from his pocket. The care in his movements revealed more than friendship. 12 incoming east side. Rivera's voice suddenly crackled through the comm unit that had reactivated automatically once the interference from the sonic device cleared. "Not Catherine's team." Marcus's instincts flared. "We need to move, now." Marcus secured the kidnappers and retrieved Sophie's phone from one of their pockets. "We need to move. There may be more." As they navigated back through the factory complex, Sophie explained what she'd overheard. The kidnappers were former intelligence operatives working for a private military contractor, the same contractor Catherine had been investigating before her retirement. They kept talking about something called Blackwater Protocol, Sophie said as they reached the exit. My mother knows what it is. Marcus nodded grimly. That's why they took you. Leverage. It's a black ops program, Eli added unexpectedly. Sophie told me some of it. Her mother found evidence of civilian casualties being covered up. Marcus shot the young man a questioning look. Pre-law before I switched to pre-med, Eli explained. My father works for the DOD. I've heard things. The connections were forming in Marcus's mind. Catherine's sudden retirement 3 years ago, the same time Marcus had left the service. The nightmares that had driven him to the mountains hadn't been just about what he'd seen, but what he'd been part of without knowing. Dr. Amari's voice came through the comms again. Marcus, Catherine's team is 3 minutes out. Secondary extraction team in position at the north exit. The night air felt cleaner as they emerged, Jax leading the way, constantly scanning for threats. Marcus's phone vibrated with a message from Catherine. Her team was 3 minutes out. Rivera appeared from the shadows, tablet still in hand. Vehicle secured 2 blocks east, he reported, looking years younger in the field than he had in their VA support group meetings. Like Marcus, civilian life hadn't suited him. Will you be in trouble? Sophie asked suddenly. For coming alone? For not waiting for backup? Marcus looked down at Jax, who had positioned himself protectively between Sophie and the street. The old war dog's eyes were clear and focused, his purpose renewed. Sometimes the rule book doesn't have all the answers, Marcus replied. Your mother understood that. The distant sound of vehicles approaching reminded Marcus that while this battle was won, the war behind it was just beginning. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood on the porch of his mountain cabin, watching as Catherine's SUV climbed the winding driveway. The investigation had moved quickly after Sophie's rescue, Kovach's confession implicating several high-ranking officials in the private military sector. Dr. Amari had called it exposure therapy at its most extreme, but even she couldn't deny the change in both Marcus and Jax since the mission. Jax lay in a patch of sunlight, his ears perking up at the sound of the approaching vehicle. The arthritis was still there, but he moved with more purpose now, the morning training sessions no longer just routine, but preparation. Catherine wasn't alone. Sophie stepped out of the passenger side, carrying a small package. Behind them, a second vehicle appeared, Rivera at the wheel, Eli beside him, and Dr. Amari in the back seat. The contractor's operation has been dismantled, Catherine reported without preamble. Your evidence was conclusive. The Blackwater Protocol was a data collection scheme targeting our active intelligence assets. We've contained it. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. And the men we encountered? In custody, facing multiple federal charges. Catherine's professional demeanor softened slightly. You two saved dozens of field operatives from exposure. Dr. Amari approached, clinical clipboard replaced with a more personal demeanor. The VA board reviewed your case, she said. They've approved the pilot program we discussed. Sophie approached Jax, who had risen to greet her. I brought something for you, she said, unwrapping the package to reveal a new tactical vest. Lighter, more flexible than his old one, with reinforced panels designed specifically for aging service dogs. It's prototype equipment, Catherine explained, developed for veteran canines transitioning to civilian security work. Rivera and Eli unloaded several crates of equipment from the second vehicle. Training facility is being set up 20 miles from here, Rivera said. Close enough for convenience, far enough to maintain your privacy. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Is that a job offer? Catherine smiled. More of an invitation. There's a new program training retired military handlers and their dogs for specialized recovery operations, finding missing persons, natural disaster response, situations where official channels might be compromised. Marcus looked at Jax, now proudly wearing his new vest, standing taller somehow. Around them, the beginnings of a new chapter were taking shape. Purpose without war, service without uniform. "I thought we were done," he said quietly. "Maybe you were done with war," Catherine replied. "But were you done with purpose?" The answer was written in Jax's alert stance and Marcus's straightened shoulders. Some partnerships were forged for more than one mission. This brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching. Till the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.